Okay, we're going to talk about the Comet Neowise, and as it approached the Earth in March of 2020, and we're speculating, astrologically speaking, that the coming of the comet in some ways correlated with, if not caused, the plague of 2020, which is known as the coronavirus. Now, comets, as you know, are blamed for a lot of disasters. When a comet comes, that's supposed to be, kings are supposed to die, there's supposed to be revolutions, vast disruptions, plagues, floods. That's correct. That's what happens. And we're right in the middle of that right now. We got the plague, but just looking at it from a point of view of, logical cause and effect, the plague will bring a poverty and unemployment, which will create disruptions, and then the government will try something, and no matter how hard they try, they'll get it wrong. Well, I'm not blaming them. I mean, but they will get it wrong anyway because it's too complicated. And then people will, think they know better, and they'll start revolutions and assassinations and you name it. In the meantime, they'll be spreading the plague further, because it seems like the human race is kind of like lemmings. Every once in a while, a whole bunch of lemmings. So what, I don't know if they call it a fleet of lemmings or a herd of lemmings, but they will all rush right over the cliff into the sea and drown themselves. And they get this in their head that they do it, and then they're on their way, and they do that periodically. They, species wipe out, but thus far they haven't succeeded in wiping out the whole species. But that's kind of like what the human race is like. We can't live with success. We overpopulate, and then that brings upon a certain reaction, and eventually we get bored with our small, pitiful lives, and we kill ourselves off. We kill ourselves, and we kill ourselves off, and that's what we see now. Is human beings are gathering in vast mobs. Meantime, spreading the virus, and they're going to Disneyland, for crying out loud, right when they know there's a plague there, in some sort of what we would now call denial. But at any rate, we're killing ourselves off. Now, will we kill ourselves off completely? I don't think we're that good. We probably won't, but we'll do substantial damage, and then as a result of that. And this is what we're going to come into when we start talking about the 8th house. There will be vast inheritances and redistribution of wealth. Now, I think the important astrological point is that advanced graphics here. You see that little squiggle there? One of these is the comet. That's the comet down here, and that's Saturn up there. The comet and Saturn. What's the comet and Saturn doing? Meantime, I think you find on that sheet of paper, if you have advanced cameras, you'll find out what my bank account and several passwords and so on. So just as a matter of honor, don't go reading my mail, okay? But what we have is a chart there of an inconjunct, or 150-degree angle, between the comet at perhelion, which was July 2nd or 3rd, which was at 0 Cancer, and Saturn, which is at 0 of Aquarius, or was at that time. So, a comet moves rather quickly through the heavens and in a real weird orbit, never to return again, or in this case for another 8,000 years, they figure. But one of the places that seems to work in terms of astrology is the perhelion. The point at which it reaches the nearest, closest to the sun. Per meaning the closest, I guess, or close to, or something like that. Helion meaning Helios, the sun. So when it reaches the nearest point to the sun, that's the closest, the perhelion. And this comet, which is called Neowise, what an exciting name, huh? Comet Neowise reached perhelion at the point in the zodiac, which we astrologers call 29 of Gemini, or practically 0 of Cancer. Now, practically, it makes a big difference because it's on the hidden side of 0 of Cancer. 0 of Cancer, of course, being a cardinal point. And the other interesting thing that happened at that time, and this is all very time-centered because, the plague came, it was first, discovered in China just towards the end of last year, but it got pretty serious about the middle of March, and, the governor started shutting down states, and, there's a big to-do about that. And so that happened in mid-March. So now we have the perhelion happening in July. And as we speak, the only reason I'm making this video is because people still care. It hasn't passed away yet. The question is, how bad is it going to get before it gets better? And will it get better in time for the election, or will it get better next year, or how soon? Before we don't have to go outside and worry about dying. So that's why it's relevant. But in the meantime, at this perhelion of the comet, we also had in 0 of Cancer, we have, of course, the ingress into into 0 of Cancer. I don't think they call that an ingress commonly, but it's the first day of summer, which happened on the first day of summer. And interestingly, we had a new moon in 0 of Cancer as well. So it so happened that the moon caught up with the sun, and they both made a conjunction in the degree 0 of Cancer. And then, 2 weeks later, we have the perhelion of the comet to the sun in 29 of Gemini. And 29 of Gemini goes into 0 of Cancer. So those two are straddling the cardinal point of 0 of Cancer. And 0 of Cancer is very important in terms of the world. When you look at world events, the uranian astrologers like to look at 0 of Cancer. They say, well, that somehow rules the Mother Earth. Now, the closest aspect, and the one that's so obvious, and if you look at Astrology King, had a lot to say about this. In fact, I began my research with Astrology King, a gentleman there named Jamie Partridge, figured this out, months before I did, that there it was, 150-degree angle between 0 of Cancer and Saturn in 0 of Aquarius. So an inconjunct, or 150-degree angle, isn't considered the strongest aspect, and I think the conjunction, when the two planets are actually in the same place, is considered the strongest. But 150 degrees is a legitimate aspect, and it is a point where things do happen. It's based on a 12th division of the circle. So if you divide the circle into 12s, then you have 30 degrees per, and that's good enough for us to make the zodiac. So, 12 is a meaningful division of the circle. The conjunction, of course, there's no division of the circle, but when we have your opposition, that's the two-way dividing of the circle. So the 180 degrees is important. Then you divide by 3. That's called a trine, and 1/3 of the circle, and you divide by 4. That's considered a very strong aspect, a square. You divide by 5, and that's a quintile. You divide by 6, that's 60 degrees. That's a sextile. That's mildly nice. Divide by 7, that's kind of a difficult. John Addy found it's called a septile, and John Addy found in his research of, he did a lot of horoscopes of preachers, and the preachers seem to have the 1/7 of the circle, and 7 being traditionally, for thousands of years, the sacred number. So, when the preachers had the 1/7 of the circle aspect, that seemed to make sense. They're aligned to the spiritual dimension. You might say, well, 1/8 is 45-degree angle, very strong. 1/9, not too used, a noventile, 40 degrees. 1/10, 36 degrees, I don't hear about. 1/11, I've never heard of. Probably the strongest one of all, but we're ignoring it. Who knows? 1/12, we get to 30 degrees. So then you have 1/12, 30 degrees, 2/12, which is 1/6. You have 60 degrees, 90 degrees, 120, and then you have 150. Which is 5/12. Now, you say, well, that's a big damn deal, right? Well, let's go back to the way they established the zodiac and the houses of the horoscope. In other words, it seems that like this 12th division, 1/12th division, works rather well. Now, 12 is 3 times 4, of course. It's also 2 times 6. It's 1 times 12. That's it. But, the 12, number 12 has always been convenient. We have a dozen. You could buy a half a dozen. You could buy a third of a dozen. You could buy a fourth of a dozen. These are actual apples, right? Half a dozen being 6 apples, and, third of a dozen being 1/3 of 12 is what? 4 apples. And so on. A fourth of a dozen is 1/4 of 12. That's three apples. So they found it convenient to create a house division based on 12. Now, that's not the only possible division. In fact, you had your ancient Babylonians having an 8-house system. Which, John Addy, he would call that the 8th harmonic. And the 8th harmonic really works, as the Uranian astrologers know. They go in for 90 degrees, of course, everybody does, but they go in for 45s a lot, and half of 45 as far as that goes. So, the 12th is not the only division of the circle, but it seemed to work pretty well in Western astrology. And when most of us talk about, I have moon in the 7th house, they're talking about the 12-house system, which is 30 degrees per house. When they talk about the fact that I'm a Pisces, they're also talking about a 12th division of the zodiac. And as the intermediate astrologer discovers, there is some analog between the 12 houses of the zodiac and the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 12 houses of the horoscope, in that the first house is the self, and Aries is supposed to be about the self, and the second house is one's possessions, and the second sign of Taurus, them people are really into possessions. And the third house, Gemini, is about communication, and the third house is about communication, and the third sign of the zodiac, Gemini, those people talk an awful lot, and so on and so forth. So there's correlation between houses and signs of the zodiac. Now, there are people who say, no, that's the wrong way to do it. Let's just, houses have a different meaning than signs. And so there are a few astrologers, and good ones too. I think Robert Hahn might be one of those that says no, let's not make an analog between houses and signs. Let's just stick to what's in the books. And signs are signs and houses are houses, and never the twain shall meet. However, I am of the opposite opinion, as are most people. Now, taking this one step further, you can have your aspects. And your aspects are such that aspects may also be correlated to houses and signs. And I see that, time is running out. This is getting to be a lengthy video. Much ado about nothing, I guess. But what we will pursue later on is the fact that the 150-degree angle is a 6th house and an 8th house relationship. And one reason you have a lot of deaths and the relationship between the comet, perhelion, and Saturn being an 8th house or a 6th house relationship, you look at what's happening in terms of 6th and 8th house, and we'll get into this further in the next video, and I'll be wearing a different shirt. I think that's so far that's my idea of planning my program, is what shirt I'm going to wear. But anyhow, we will see that the 150-degree angle may be thought of as a 6th and 8th house relationship, and as between the comet and Saturn, we'll see that's responsible for 8th house being what? Birth, death, and sex, and other people's money, most important, and the 6th house being disease and servants and pets. We'll see. Anyhow, thanks. We'll be back in the next lesson. This is part 2 of the comet, and presumably in a day or two we'll have part 3.